Welcome to this program by Catalyst of San Diego and Imperial Counties, sponsored by our good friends at Bank of America, from whom you will hear in a moment. My name is Megan Thomas. I am the president and CEO of our lovely organization, which brings funders together to learn, lead, and invest towards a vision of an equitable, collaborative, impactful social change ecosystem. We really like to think about ourselves as existing in this larger picture that involves our community members, our government, corporations, and really everybody that makes this community what it is, and the notion that we all need to be working together. Per the title of this session about sustaining resilient communities. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And like I would guess most of you, I am coming at you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Kumeyaay people, which is also the back bedroom in my home in Pacific Beach. A little bit of housekeeping, and then I'm going to turn it over to Pam to open us up. As you saw, we are recording. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat. We have a good group, but it's not so huge that we can't incorporate your comments and questions throughout, I think. So that'll be great. And we also welcome you to ask that question yourself if you want to. We'll just turn the mic over to you. And there will be a very brief, I believe it's a 3-question poll at the end, made even easier because it'll pop up on your screen. So if you can take a moment to click your answers in that before departing, we would appreciate it. And with that, and with gratitude, Pam, please open us up.
Thank you so much, Megan. We are so excited to be here. And as Megan said, I am Pamela Gabriel, Senior Vice President, San Diego Market Executive, and we are the very proud sponsors of this particular impact investing series with Catalyst. It is our second year in doing this, and we just find it to be extremely valuable and completely in alignment with what Bank of America is trying to achieve within the community. We recently announced our $1.25 billion investment back into the community, in addition to our existing foundation support, specifically focusing on advancing racial equality, which includes small business support, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And so, as you can see, it really is in alignment with what we're trying to do to help San Diego recover. And you are going to be hearing from some wonderful speakers, whom a couple of them I have worked very closely with in having conversations on how we can partner and invest back into San Diego. And so Bank of America truly realizes the importance of working with small businesses and helping them to recover through this pandemic. And so we are very thankful to have this 4-part series and look forward to hearing from our wonderful speakers. And thank you again to Catalyst and Megan and Carlos for all of their work and making this happen and bringing this to you all today. So I will now pass it back to you, and so that we can get on with the show. So thank you.
Thanks, Pam. So, if you're here, you probably know that in San Diego and Imperial Counties, by far, most of our businesses are small businesses, which technically is 500 or fewer employees. But when we look around this region, we're really talking about, 50 or fewer employees or 20 or fewer employees. So when we think about, as philanthropists and investors, the crowd of folks that we're trying to support, to uplift, to build wealth with, it's the owners, not just the employees, but it's the owners of these businesses as well. And so while philanthropy can help continue and strengthen a social safety net and provide opportunities for people to expand what they're able to do on their own, we also look to impact investing as a critically important tool that philanthropy and others can deploy. So I'm really happy to be in conversation today with my good friends Ken Davenport from Mission Edge and Lauren Gratton from Mission Driven Finance. And we are also hoping that Kim Folsom from Founders First will be able to join us. So we'll forge ahead with Ken and Lauren, and you will not be disappointed. So I want to just invite each of them to introduce themselves, briefly talk about the work that they're doing, why they do it, and their perspective on this whole question of small businesses and sustainable communities. And then we'll get into conversation. And as I said, please feel free to pop your questions in the chat. or just kind of make a signal if you want to get in on the conversation with us. And let's start with Lauren.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, Pam, for helping make this, I was going to say season, but it is a bit of a season, this series possible with the second season of it. And it's delightful to join you all today at Catalyst talking about small business. So I am Lauren Gratton. I am co-founder, chief community officer of Mission Driven Finance. We are an impact investment firm and certified B Corporation based here in San Diego and dedicated to building a financial system that ensures good businesses have access to sufficient affordable capital. Unfortunately, not everybody does. So we exist to make it easy to invest in your community, designing funds and structured products that help close capital gaps that in turn will close opportunity gaps, really helping people to have more equitable access to education, health, and wealth. So we work with local and national partners, helping them to create the impact that they want, and with businesses and communities to help get the capital that they need. And we started roughly 5 years ago with a place-based strategy here in San Diego, working with a lot of our lending partners and Mission Edge and Catalyst, formerly grant makers, on being able to help to understand what these gaps were and really support small businesses. So I know that we're going to get into it a bit, but for everybody to have some of that context that Megan was alluding to, as of about 2 years ago, California EDD data showed that for San Diego County, 98% of the businesses here have 100 or fewer employees, and they make up 59% of our workforce. So taking care of these small businesses is really important. This is how the vast majority of, not the vast majority, but a very large part of our population are employed and get all of the benefits from employment and all of those aspects that we need for a thriving community. So just wanted to ground us with some of those statistics. I know numbers aren't always the most exciting, but 98% is quite a large number. So just wanted to remind us of that. And I'm delighted to have Ken here too. So Ken, one of my favorite people, want to hear from you.
Thank you, Lauren. Excuse me. Thanks, Megan and Pamela. I don't think we've met, but love the work you're doing at Bank of America. So thank you for your support in the community. Yeah, I think Mission Edge really is, if I would classify it, as kind of on the execution support side. So we're not as much around capital itself, but actually helping organizations to deploy the capital appropriately to figure out what to do with the money and how to grow their business in order to qualify for follow-on funding. I mean, that's kind of the space that we're looking to play. We've been around 10 years. I started Mission Edge out of the private sector as a longtime entrepreneur, and we are technically a nonprofit, although we're really a social enterprise. So 90% of our budget is fee supported. And we do lots of nuts and bolts stuff around back office support, accounting, finance, HR. We have a pretty thriving fiscal sponsor program where we help projects get started in the community, particularly the for-profits that are looking to do nonprofit work or startup nonprofits that are looking to create social change will start out with us, and they may stay or they may graduate or they may go away, depending on how their model works. And then for the last 5 years, we've been pretty deeply involved in trying to seed the social impact ecosystem, the social enterprise ecosystem, working with startup nonprofits, but increasingly for-profits, working on small business ideas that also have a social impact component. And so we've got a sale accelerator that we run twice a year, mostly focused on the LMI community in partnership with the city of San Diego. So we work with a lot of underserved founders. And our newest program that's going to kick off this year is a BIPOC focused. It's kind of a hybrid between an accelerator and a fund. So we have raised some fund money to provide some liquidity to early stage Black-owned businesses to try to get them into the position of being able to take money from a mission-driven finance or follow-on funding. And so really early stage, but organizations that are in market that just don't have access to seed funding and don't have access to the kind of the financial expertise that we can provide. So that's kind of that's the niche that we're looking to play now in that field. But I'm really happy to be here. I think that San Diego has a great market for this. And I think, Lauren knows that I'm big on partnering and connecting, and it takes a village, to make this go, and you can't do it all by yourself. So.
Oh, somebody's after you.
Always.
I have these meetings because I get this scan of the different notification sounds that I might want to incorporate into my own.
Yeah.
I'm good with where I am now, but that was a good one. Thanks so much, Ken and Lauren. Appreciate that. But we're going to just kind of spend some time digging in a little bit to the work that you're doing, each of you, with Mission Edge and MDF. And then we'll kind of come back around to a larger systemic conversation. And I just want to recognize, and I'm Sarah for being on video. Hey, hi, good to see you. We love it. You make us feel like we're not speaking into a blank void, but also recognize that everybody's taking care of themselves in their own way off video. Also very much welcome that. Hey, Chuck, what's up? So
okay, go ahead, shame me into turning my camera on. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to go back to in-person meetings and people are just going to carry around pieces of black construction paper with them. Like, I'm not here. Lauren, let's go back to you. So MDF, Mission Driven Finance, is a B Corp, right? Can you just talk a little bit about what that means? It's a relatively new phenomenon, right? And why does that give you this relationship with clients and investors and community members, just generally all the stakeholders? It's a little bit different than what might be with a nonprofit or a for-profit company.
Yeah, great question, Megan. So legally, we are a California LLC, and that's not all that exciting in and of itself. But like Ken, we exist for both profit and purpose. And being a certified B Corporation is really this third-party analysis of what are those commitments that we make, where we've seen some performative commitments, they've been exposed as performative. This is a third-party certification that says how you run your business is as important as what you do for your business. Every business has the potential to be a business for good, a force for good, by thinking about how you take care of your employees. Who do you choose to hire? How are they able to grow in your organization? Who are your customers? What's your supply chain? So while there are different ways to get certified, there are different pathways for the types of business. All of them are through the B Corporation and B Lab, the nonprofit that does the certification. They will evaluate and verify the kind of impact that you're committed to making through your business practices. I have had no small number of early stage companies come to me and say, hey, we want to do a give back program. I'm like, sweetheart, you're not going to be profitable for a while, so there's nothing to give back. But can you make some changes to your business currently? Can you use your existing balance sheet, the existing operating expenses that you have, and do them with intention? So that's really the purpose behind the B Corp, thinking about transparency, thinking about how we interact with our community, and thinking about all of the inputs for running a business.
I imagine that you have to think differently, or more maybe. In the last 5 years, has it been hard? Are there things that you've had to sort of kind of grit your teeth and go for it?
I think all business is hard. And I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I came from nonprofits and philanthropy, did not think, oh boy, this is definitely what I'm going to do. Unlike Ken, who's done this multiple times over and loves it. I fell into it, saying that this is what we need to do. Running a business is very challenging, and running a mindful business, an intentional business, is hard. But locally, we have a delightful set of humans that are also certified B corporations. We get together quarterly and share notes on what does it look like. Dr. Bronner's is our largest. They have fantastic practices that they've put into place. So having this, like, that's actually part of this conversation as well, is how can we support small businesses, is helping create these safe spaces where we can make it easier to stay in business, because that's a really key part of it. I do know that a lot of the B Corps just anecdotally shared that they're doing better than ever since the pandemic started. Dr. Bronner sold a ton of soap and hand sanitizer, of course, that makes sense. But for a lot of the marketing-based businesses and for mission-driven finance, we saw that there was an uptick in folks that were interested in really aligning their assets and their values as we watched a global network really crumbling. They said, we've got to do things differently. And so they're allocating their choices of how they spend their corporate capital or investing into things that they believe in. And that's an exciting change that we're really starting to see pick up momentum.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yes, fair enough. Being a business owner is hard, whether you're small, large, whatever you're doing. And you're speaking sort of to this idea of integration, right? Integration of values throughout whatever you're doing, integration of community, and when we think about how to create a sustainable society with thriving businesses owned by people of color, women, indigenous people, folks who often don't have services tailored to them, right? Because the way that our sort of commercial sector is designed is from the perspective of people who have always controlled those resources, typically white, typically richer, et cetera, et cetera. And so there are lots of nuances that look differently. And Ken, I want to talk to you a little bit about that ecosystem, because you think about this larger picture of not just funding, not just an accelerator, but an ecosystem for entrepreneurs. Can you talk a little bit about what we have that's working well, in particular for folks who aren't going to go to sort of the traditional sources, and what's missing, and what should we be thinking about doing to improve that business support network?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we spent quite a bit of time thinking about that and looking at the ecosystem in order to see how we could fit in and add value and not just recreate something that already exists. So this last 6 months, we've done a lot of market research. And I think that what we found is that there's lots of advice out there. There's lots of programs that are available to give you mentorship and, help you with your business plan. And there's a lot of teaching going on. But there's not a lot of doing, and a lot of these organizations that we work with are very long on passion, and I think have a kernel of a good idea, but don't really have the support system to take it from idea actually to market, where you could have a sustainable operating business. It's a big leap from a business plan to a company, and some of that is, I think, sort of perpetuated by the startup zeitgeist, that, you can raise money on the back of a napkin, and, you see these funding rounds that happen in the Silicon Valley, and there's money everywhere, and well, it can't be that hard. But in reality, as Lauren said, it's very hard, and it's very hard to create something that actually will grow and be sustainable over the long run. And I think what we've found is that for a lot of particularly product companies, where the rubber hits the road is simply in learning how to sell. And selling is super important, and no one really wants to do it. So we have a lot of people who'd rather do everything else except for sell. And, we worked with a number of small companies that had inventory, then they could go out and sell, and yet they wanted to work on a new product instead of the inventory they had sitting in their garage, and they were hemorrhaging money. And so a lot of it is just kind of nuts and bolts, just hard work, the hard stuff that people don't want to do because it's a grind and people don't like rejection, so they don't want to, they don't want to put themselves out there. And I think one of the things we're trying to fill is how do we help people kind of do the hard stuff in order to get to a place where their business model will really be sustainable and fundable over the long run. And cash flow has to be a part of these discussions. You cannot generally build a small business on the back of investors. It's just not viable unless you have a unicorn that you're sitting on and you can get money from venture capital. It's got to be revenue based. It's got to be, it's blocking and tackling stuff. It's just, it's not sexy, but it's what's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a great point, Ken, is that even if you are going to get investors, they want to know how you're going to repay them. So sales are key. And I'm in several business support groups, but talking about really what you were saying, putting things into practice and getting out of these theoretical frameworks, or heaven forbid, another PDF toolkit. It's not what business owners need. They really need hands-on coaching to understand real life examples and to break down some of that fear.
Yeah, I think it's one other thing. I think it is hands-on, and I think one of the things that founders of color have lacked is that partnership with folks who have access to the networks that are necessary to get funded. Like, literally going to the meeting together and not just sort of making a cold introduction, because that's just not the way that business is really conducted. You really have to have a relationship. And I think one of the things that what we found in the survey that we've done is that the communities of color and the BIPOC community in particular just doesn't have the relationships in place to go get even a $10,000 financing round in order to get their first tranche of inventory. And so, it's up to us to kind of open those doors and try to bring these parties together in a way that will help to grow the community.
I'm sure Megan has another question. I was like, I want just
Keep going.
jump onto Ken's comment for a second. Is this element that I hear kind of implied is also this sponsorship, not like how Pam has so wonderfully sponsored this series, but using your own social capital to support entrepreneurs and founders of color. Not just say, here's that warm handoff, here's the introduction, go forth, baby bird, are you gonna fly? But really to help in that conversation to say, be a little bit of a cheerleader and say, this person that's in our community is fantastic. And I'm so excited to meet you because X, Y, and Z. So often what we found both with running our community finance fellowship and working with entrepreneurs of color is that they have been conditioned culturally to be told that you need to perform at 200% to be taken seriously at 100%. And so there's a fear of failure. There's a fear of putting yourself out there and getting shut down. And that instead being able to say, I see you, I see the value, I see how incredible you are. And that validation, helping them to have the confidence then to make their sales, to make their investor conversations be really strong. So we do that with all of the folks that we work with, is when we see that opportunity, we see that tenacity, we see how incredible they are in identifying what their community needs, to tuck them up and give them that boost of confidence so that we can undo a bunch of those decades of programming.
Yeah, I mean, let's kind of stay with this theme for a little bit. And I'd love to hear if folks on the call are you investing in these types of businesses? Have you seen some of these practices? Are you doing it yourself? And Kim unfortunately isn't able to join us today, but Founders First does similar work in that they are investing in diverse-led companies to grow and scale through not just funding, but advisory services, mentorship, all of this work. And I know, Lauren, you just closed up a cohort of your fellowship program that it would be interesting to hear about. But, part of this work is to open doors and build relationships in ways that require us to get out of our bubble a little bit, right? Like to actually be in the communities we're working with. And not only that, but to equip those communities with the jobs and the networks that come naturally or more naturally to folks like me. Grew up as a white woman in a fairly well-to-do neighborhood. I went to college, so like all these networks and people who are, as you said, conditioned to support me. How do I leverage that in a way that is going to create that sort of environment for small business owners to whom that doesn't naturally come? And I know Mission Edge for a long time for its fiscally sponsored projects has done workshops and sort of supportive services in the same vein. Do you want to just talk a little bit about how are we changing the environment? How are we not just providing a service that can get one business owner into a different place, but creating a new culture and a new system and a new network that can make the field sort of more conducive to that overall for somebody who might not have a direct connection to MDF or to Mission Edge, but is now coming into a new environment. And this is sort of a Carlos likes to ask the question of what's your hopeful vision for the future, and I'm visioning a little bit because this is certainly not what we have today, but like how are we going to get there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of taking a chance. I mean, I think part of what we wanted to do with this new program is actually have money to invest ourselves. We wanted to do more than just provide education and advice. Like we felt like, if we're not first money in, then how much confidence do we really have in the organizations that we're working with? And I want to be able to go to the investor network that I know and say, look, we've already put money in here. This is a fundable business. This person has a great potential and needs more than just lip service and more than just, kind of a pat on the back. They need money to start and scale what they're doing. Right. And I think it really requires people to step up and, take risks with the capital that they have. I think part of the challenge with the investing system as a whole now is that, venture capital is no longer really risk capital. Venture capital seems more like private equity to me. And there is a gap now in terms of who's actually really seeding some of these high risk ventures that may or may not work, but are certainly not going to work if they don't have any funding. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a place for impact investing in that kind of, in a different risk model, a different tolerance model to say, look, this may fail, but if it succeeds, it could be a transformational impact, right? And not just for the founder, but also the community that they're working in. And, to not think, well, I need to get 3% or I need to get 10x return or like whatever. It's like, if you're going to write a check to philanthropy, you might as well write it to a small business that may lose it because it's probably better suited there than it will be in, whatever nonprofit you're putting the money into. So I think it requires a bit of a mind shift in terms of how you look at early stage ventures. And then I think it requires an ecosystem of partners that can sort of step in every step along the way and provide liquidity and access to business development opportunities and networks to grow. And I think that we all have to kind of work together to see how all those pieces fit together.
Yeah. Now we're getting into it. So, there's so much there. I think there's this interesting conversation happening that I think of as social change capital, right? We think about philanthropy, we think about venture capital, and you just said, well, if you're gonna give some money to a nonprofit, why don't you just invest it in a business? You're going to get, potentially it's 0% return, or as some say, negative 100% return either way. So why not do that? And that's part of the conversation too with philanthropy, to say, look, philanthropy can invest in business. This is a good way to build up economic sustainability and financial security and wealth in communities. But then there's also this conversation about risk capital and why, like, who defined investing in women-owned businesses as risky, right? Like, why is that the perspective? And so philanthropic capital or VC capital can be like, why don't we call it strategic, right? Like, or impact capital or something of that nature. And Lauren, I know that you and Mission Driven Finance are kind of working around the country to find these places where you can have an impact through not just the dollars, but the way that you're investing and the partnerships that you're choosing. Do you want to talk maybe a little bit about just any project that you've invested in or not, and why that is different than just looking for that 3% or that 10x?
Oof, man, between you and Ken, there's so much juicy stuff to unpack here. There's a lot of great examples, and I'm sad that Kim couldn't join us today because what she's built at Founders First is truly incredible. At the risk of making everybody glaze over with another number, the Kauffman Foundation had research a couple of years ago that 83% of businesses across the US access neither venture capital nor bank loans. And so we talk about debt and equity and we're like, those are our tools. Like, well, if 83% aren't using those tools, then we can't call this other stuff alternative capital. It's what most businesses are using. So 83% are using a variety, hodgepodge of things to be able to make their businesses work. And a lot of that is because of what you touched on, Megan. Who defines risk capital? Who said what's risky and what's not? What's worthy of investing in? It comes back to those comments I was saying before of like working with entrepreneurs, working with individual people, being able to say, I see you, I see this potential, I see opportunity instead of seeing risk. Just because you have a different skin tone than I do, your gender expression is different than mine, doesn't necessarily mean that that's lesser, right? It just means that we're different. But often that othering turns into pricing higher, saying, I don't understand that, so I'm just going to make you pay more, or I'm going to put a lien on your house, or I'm going to do these kinds of things because I don't think that you'll be able to make it. So I could talk about that a lot. I'm going to pivot to your actual question, which is what examples do we see? One, and I brought up Kim as a great example at Founders First, they have a revenue-based investment product, which is a lovely thing to have in between those extremes of debt and equity. It means that it can better serve a lot of entrepreneurs who need to have somebody say, I see you, and have the flexibility that your capital is going to, you're not going to have a fixed debt schedule that say like, you've got to make this payment every month. If you have a rainy day, that'll go down. If you are having a fantastic revenue coming in, you're going to pay off your capital faster. And so having these innovations of capital tools is one of the things that I see, not just at Mission Driven Finance, but for the field to better support small businesses, is having a whole suite of tools. And we say all the time, like, while we come from a private credit perspective, and that's like our bread and butter, that we need all the tools in the toolbox. Ken said it takes a village. We really need everything working to support small businesses, and particularly to support small businesses run by women and people of color. That what has been built has not been built with them in mind. And we have the opportunity to imagine new tools that better meet folks where they're at. So Kim is a great example. Founders First, love them so much. We're also working with a revenue-based investment fund in St. Louis. It's place-based. It's on top of an accelerator for Black and Latinx entrepreneurs. They're earlier stage than a lot of other businesses that we work with, but it's that kind of flexibility that entrepreneurs of color don't give up ownership. They're not saying like, this thing, my baby, my business, I suddenly I can't own the whole thing anymore because I don't have generational wealth. My family, my friends and family network can't fill out an early stage round. Does that mean that I shouldn't be able to own my business? So revenue-based investing is an exciting way to maintain ownership within community and have flexibility for those entrepreneurs to have a tool that flexes with them. So I'm really excited about that. There are pros and cons to how RBI gets set up, but I'm not going to go into financial nerding in this conversation. You can email me anytime if you want to have that conversation, because I will. But I think it's those innovations that really take a human-centered design approach to them and say, how can we think about who is the end user of this and what do they really need to thrive?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. And I just want to point folks, if you're not monitoring the chat, to Sarah, come off mute and tell me, Sarah or Sarah? So say your name.
Sarah.
Sarah. Okay, cool. Thanks for chatting that you have opportunities for your donor advised fund clients to actually do this type of thing, which I think is increasing in its practice. I know that the Jewish Community Foundation and the San Diego Foundation are working in these spaces as well. But is there anything that you want to add just about that, and maybe, you know, how are clients responding, or what are some of the things that they are most interested in doing in this space?
Yeah, I also wanted to point out that Mission Driven Finance is also on the Impact Assets 50 list. So they're one of our, highlighted as one of our emerging managers this last year. So it's great to have them a part of that network this year. But we have a couple turnkey options because we noticed like some of the hurdles for impact investors to get involved have to do with just amounts, right? So if for an entrepreneur of color, $5,000 might not do much if that's all a donor can give through their philanthropic dollars versus 25,000. So because we're able to aggregate across our platform, we're actually able to have slightly larger checks for founders without either messing up their cap table or any other type of activity that's not going to be as meaningful. So we have private debt, private equity options. We work with community investment management. And again, their minimums are typically higher to go direct through them, but because they're on our platform, our DAF clients can invest in that fund at a $10,000 minimum, and even kind of direct by geography and or whether or not they want it to go into a fund for BIPOC founders or women-led organizations. So that's at like that particular level. And then for those who want to do direct deals and have a business that they have in mind, they could do that through our custom investments program for a minimum of $25,000 through their DAF. And then for those DAF clients who can't meet either of those minimums, we do have a charitable investment fund that we launched, a community and business resilience fund. They don't get the returns from that particular investment because it is a charitable fund, but Impact Assets makes the investment. And then when those returns happen, they go into that charitable pool again, and we're able to make additional investments when those when we see those gains come back.
Thanks, Sarah. I think you are pointing out a sort of interesting side note to this whole conversation, which is about democratizing the investor side, right? So that the people who are investing in our community businesses and diverse owners don't have to be bazillionaires, right? It can be folks who have, you know, in this case, maybe $10,000, $25,000. And I've seen some other models where we're talking about folks who can contribute $25 And the setup looks differently depending on what the fund is and what the arrangement is and what type of money it is. But it's really important for us to be able to create a system in which everybody can be contributing in some way, as a business owner, as a donor, as an investor, and really thinking about all the ways that we can move these funds around to build that better way of being. So we're going to take a quick pause before coming back for just brief closing remarks and divide ourselves into 3 groups. Try and get you into a little bit of discussion. I'm sorry if we're tearing the black construction paper veil away, because it's going to be hard to hide in these groups since we're a fairly intimate crowd. But we'll have 3 rooms. Ken will be in one, Lauren will be in one, and I will be in one. And Carlos just popped a prompt in there, which we know is always sort of a best of intentions sort of exercise. Probably you'll come up with a really invigorating conversation, no matter where it takes you. But if you need somewhere to begin, the question is, what investment approaches can you begin exploring? Things that you're doing now that you could deepen, something you heard about today or in another context that you want to check out, and just kind of bat that around a little bit with the other folks in your room. With that, I think Carlos is going to pop something up for us to click. There it is. You have been invited to join a room. Please click join, and we'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Well, that was super fun. With my group, we got all the way to dismantling the entire financial system, essentially, and remodeling it on the Bernie Sanders funding campaign. So that's where we landed. No, I hope you all had a really fantastic conversation. So just very brief closing remarks from each of our speakers. Yeah, Lauren, and then Ken, and then I'll close this out, and there will be a poll. Stick around for that.
I think takeaways for me are that supporting small business it takes being in relationship and knowing how to have a relationship and relationships with each other. Again, Ken said it takes a village. And one of the wonderful things about the work between Mission Edge and Mission Driven Finance is that we have really strong relationships. So I know at least one of our borrowers, Marlena from the Skinny Jean Project, we said, you guys are a perfect fit to be in Mission Edge's sale program and get the kind of capacity that you need, the coaching that we can't provide, but we still see the opportunity to invest in your nonprofit, reducing type 2 diabetes and high risk LMI and BIPOC communities. And we made that introduction to Ken's team, and it's just been wonderful. And how else can we do that kind of extra mile to support each other, to take an ecosystem approach, really, that we're not all the same, that there are strengths of Mission Edge, there are strengths of Founders First, and make those warm introductions based on seeing people for all of their strengths.
Thanks, Ken. You're speaking into the void.
In the void. Yeah, there's a lot there. I think relationships is the key word to me. I think, particularly for founders of color, I think that there's a lack of trust, and I think that can only be bridged by authentic relationships with each other, and it takes time to do that, and it takes being very authentic and very deliberative, and there's no one size fits all or easy solution to any of this. And I think people who talk in generalities miss the real hard work that requires on a daily basis with individuals, because everyone's got a story and everyone has opportunities and challenges, and everyone's got to be treated kind of as the individual that they are, and it takes time and effort to do that. So I would just say don't shy away from from those relationships and from getting deep with folks who need help, but have a lot of potential, but simply just need time to get comfortable with new relationships that will help them grow over the long run. And it's really rewarding work. I mean, I feel like the SAIL program, where we worked with a lot of diverse founders, has been so rewarding to me, just because we've really seen some traction and some change in the community, and that's what this is all about.
Yeah. Thank you both. I think for me, what I take away is certainly a reaffirmation of the value of relationships, but also the notion that everything we're talking about here doesn't occur as a zero-sum game. We're not talking about taking from some and giving to others. We're talking about every relationship makes us more whole, more deep, more complex, more interesting. And every investment in the community lets us see ourselves as part of a larger whole. And if you're a data person, there is some data out there that says, because of the racial income gap, which is part of what we're talking about here, we San Diego, miss out on $54 billion a year in our economy, right? So when we're thinking about what does it mean to invest in underestimated entrepreneurs, it's about making us all more whole, about creating a bigger pie with a cherry on top. So thank you for coming here today, spending a little of your precious time with us. Please do fill out the poll that Carlos is about to pop up there. Please do reach out for a further conversation. Lauren would love to talk to you. And so would we at Catalyst. We are one of these intermediaries trying to build out the ecosystem, fill the gaps, connect the dots and the people, and create relationships that can make us all more whole. So hope you have a wonderful Thursday afternoon. We're about to hit June, so if that excites you or terrifies you, I hope you find a way to deal with that. And let's just keep the conversation going. This is part of a series. There will be more. And so please join us again. Take care. And thank you so much to Ken and Lauren for all of their thoughts and wisdom and everything they're doing in the community.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catalyst. And thank you, Carlos, for organizing us. And Pam.
Thanks to Bank of America for making it possible.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.